Testing, 1, 2, 3, here we go. Live from the New Mexico Prickly Pear Festival, this is the Toasted Sister Podcast, and I'm Andy Murphy. We're here at the historic Gutierrez Hubble House in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the 4th annual Prickly Pear Fest is going on right now. I'm Andy Murphy, creator, producer, and host of the Toasted Sister podcast. I started the show in 2017 and since then have talked with dozens of indigenous chefs, farmers, and food warriors about everything. Food sovereignty, health, climate change, culture, kitchen culture, you name it. All 78 other episodes are available wherever you listen to podcasts, and there is so much more to come. This is an independent show. If you like what you hear and you want to support the food journalism I do, check out Toasted Sister on Patreon, check out the booth outside, and you can see what else is on the website at toastedsisterpodcast.com. So let's get this conversation started. In a plate of food, we can learn about a person's origins, history, and culture. Dive deeper, and we can learn about a person's place in the community and how they're responding to good and bad changes in the environment. So for us here, a plate of food or a single ingredient like a prickly pear holds a lot of story, personal stories, and community stories. And when we talk about changing the culinary narrative of Native America, we're talking about shaking off old concepts of indigenous food and people. And for some of you listening, this might be the first time hearing about Native food and Native people from actual Native people. So let me quickly introduce my Native guests. Ray Naranjo here is the chef and owner of the Manko Native American Fusion Food Truck. He's Santa Clara Pueblo and Odawa. Andrea Garza over there on that side is a caterer and owner of Mayahuel Catering and a program director for Cooking for Health. She's also enrolled in the top Pilam Coahuiltecan Nation. And she's a traditional Aztec dancer. We also have Addie Lucero, a traditional farmer and owner of Butterfly Naturals. She's Taos Pueblo. All right, well, Ray, let's start with you. First, can you tell us a little bit about your culinary journey as a chef and tell us about how that led you up to Manko Native American Fusion?
Thank you for having me. The journey starts 2002 when I graduated from culinary school. My original focus was to learn fine dining. I did a lot of that in Arizona, came back to New Mexico where I guess the scene was a little different. So I joined at the time, so I did a lot of casino work as the casino industry was booming. So the first half of my career was, and about midway through 15 years in, I made a transition back into fine dining. Also was a part of the Pueblo Food Experience book. Together, those paralleled, and from there, I did a lot of private chefing for quite a while. Then I went back to the industry for a while, and then I decided that I just needed to be on my own. Manko was something that was kind of in the background. We tried it once before as just a catering. We had an opportunity to do it with the truck, so here we are.
All right. So, Native food, has gone through a bunch of transitions, of course, throughout history. Where do you see Native American food right now? And in your time cooking with Native American food and talking with others about Native American food, where do you see it right now?
It's an interesting question. The first part was when you grow up on the reservation, you don't really know what's really going around in the food. food scene or whatever. So like being young, fry bread was like it was native food, you know. And then as I did the Pueblo food experience, I discovered that there was so much more than native food, and native food actually influenced all the cuisines from around the world.
Why is it important for yourself and other folks in the native food scene right now? Why is it important to tell others about the origins of some of these foods? Like, I know you're talking about like chocolate and tomatoes and stuff like that.
Definitely for pride and community. I've been talking about this a lot. Where if you tell a child that their extent of culinary knowledge is in the fried bread, then that's as far as they're going to take it. But if you tell a child that their food and ingredients influence world cuisine, then it changes their perspective of the world and how they view themselves.
All right. So, you know, what other important things about indigenous food do you want people to know about? Or let me ask it this way. What are some big misconceptions about indigenous food that you want to address and correct?
Well, I can answer it this way, you know, just giving credit for the ingredients, like that influence different cuisines, like the tomato, how that influenced so many different European dishes, potatoes, and those are all indigenous ingredients. I mean, the corn, like, of course, is huge, but you know, the other ingredients play huge roles as well.
Let's bring in Addie over here. Addie, can you quickly tell us about the kind of farming you do?
I do a mixture of traditional farming, traditional being our traditional Pueblo crops from Taos Pueblo, as well as other foods and plants and medicines that I like to grow, like plant medicines. So this year I'm growing sweet corn, which is a beautiful variety that I found up in at a seed exchange, actually, in Colorado. And it's this really, really nice high elevation sweet corn, and it's coming out really nice, as well as Three Sisters, which would be our Taos Pueblo beans, our ba'u, which is our pumpkin squash, as well as yellow corn, which isn't sweet corn, it's a little bit different. And I'm also growing another variety of beans that's coming from another tribal community. And then I'm growing some other plants like cilantro. I tried my hand at chili, didn't happen. But just really trying to grow foods and plants that I use. I have some chamomile growing in the back and some varieties of tomatoes and eggplant and squash at my house.
Okay. And for everybody who just showed up, we're talking about changing the culinary narrative of Native America. Addie, what kind of stories do some of these traditional plants tell to your family, to the community?
When I think about our traditional plants, the plants that I'm growing, it really talks about the continuance. It talks about our resilience of our past and the continuation into our future. With our future generations, it tells a story of our connections to those plants, to our dances, to our culture, our songs, as well as, you know, I think about the seasons. We're in a place of climate change, and when I think about climate change, it's really scary because our plants are now, you know, they're in a place where they're going to have to adapt, right? And we as farmers need to adapt them. So I've purposely not, for this year, not watered as much as possible. And they're lovely. So I think I'm creating a stronger seed that's going to take us into this, you know, next phase of our life.
You mentioned it, but I want to, you know, go deeper into how, you know, indigenous agriculture is changing. You know, it's adapting to the climate, but even before that, it had to adapt to colonization and destruction from non-native people. You know, hundreds of years ago, even like a couple decades ago. So, you know, indigenous farming and agriculture and food, how do you see it changing even further to adapt to, you know, what's going on now?
I mean, I see a reconnection happening with our communities, you know, like Ray was talking about here. he was talking about those food stories that our youth know. I mean, does it stop at fry bread, or do we talk a little bit more about the beans? Do we talk a little bit more beyond what we're used to eating as feast food, which is known as feast food, right? What are we eating? We're eating that rabbit stew, we're eating deer meat, we're eating, tons of different, things that I harvest a lot of wow, which is wild spinach, There's tons of food that we have available to us. So when you think about all the foods that we have that are available to us, not just necessarily farming, that just come out every season that are around us, kota tea, prickly pear. I harvest a bunch of prickly pear, and how do we use that prickly pear? Is it just something that we're going to look at, or are we going to do things with? I make products out of it, but I also eat it. And so it's a diuretic. Our food is our medicine. So these are things that we want to look at, and we want to inform our youth, our families, our communities, and encourage them to take a look at what's around us and something that's seasonal that's coming out. How do we use that and encourage your mind to work a little bit more and get creative with those ingredients?
All right. Let's go on to Andrea Garza over there on the end of the table. Andrea, can you first further introduce yourself, and what kind of work do you do with Cooking for Health?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Cooking for Health is a community program that is hosted by a partnership between Agricultura Network, which is a cooperative of organic farms throughout the state of New Mexico, along with First Choice Community Healthcare. And we provide cooking classes, and we bring together different local chefs to do food demonstrations, kind of like what happened here today with the food demonstrations we had here at the Prickly Pear Festival. So we do that once a month, and we also provide free produce from our farmers to the community as well.
And why do you think it's important to change the narrative of indigenous food? Why do you think it's important to set the record straight?
Our different narratives, but what first comes to mind is, the current narrative that indigenous foods is extinct or non-existent. And really, I feel it's more about reintroducing the foods that we already consume on the daily and don't recognize that they're indigenous foods. And I think that is really important. It's just educating our people in our community and creating that consciousness of where our food comes from and how we consume on the daily traditional native foods without even knowing it.
I want to go to that topic of reintroducing native food, reintroducing indigenous food to a variety of different people. I mean, there's foodies like us who, love this stuff, and it's easy to, really get into it and really get into the history and learn more about the issues behind food, behind farming, and, there's no shortage of all kinds of issues that happens when we think about food. But for people who might not be very interested or very connected to cooking and the culinary world, like what are some really good ways to maybe get people excited about food, about some of this programming that you do?
Well, I definitely think that when we think of food and cooking in terms of how our ancestors cooked and their relation to food, I think is really important. And I think it can get, people thinking more about where their food comes from. What did my ancestors eat? How did they eat it? Where did it come from? The history that, happened since then, and what commodity foods really are about, and what they've, how they've contributed to dietary illnesses amongst indigenous people.
All right, I want to go back to Ray here. The name of your food truck is Manko, Native American Fusion. What is fusion, and how does it fit into the current identity of native food and just, the current definition of the culinary world?
Okay, so what we're trying to do, what we're trying to create is is bringing some of these ancient ingredients back. Good examples are salad. We have popped quinoa, popped amaranth. So we have these ancient ingredients, but we also have to have food that's an awesome flavor, so it could also be foodie like, so people would enjoy it also. So it's kind of walking that parallel of serving awesome food but sneaking in those ingredients. So they're there health wise. Maybe you don't always know they're there, but they're definitely there to add health.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about Native American food is that it just comes off a fire outside, and we're always supposed to do everything that our great-grandmothers and our grandmothers before that have always done, or else it's not Native American food. But really, like, what Native American food is like us cooking and eating and experiencing Korean food and experiencing, like, Italian food. And, it's inevitable that we have this really big, wide palette. We can't help but like mix in butter and pasta and white rice sometimes into our kitchens and into some of the special foods that come out like during holidays and celebrations and stuff like that. How does and I want to ask Addie over there. Addie, how do you see mixing in, different flavors and even different seeds, like in a garden and in a farming project? How do you see that really telling a newer story of the community right there?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, I grow eggplant.
Yeah.
It's not from my community. My focus isn't always solely on indigenous foods when I'm growing things, it's just tends to be what I like. Also, like we talked about, having this wide palette of where we can go to. Obviously, I'm not going to mix my seeds, because as a farmer and as a seed keeper, I want to keep my seeds as pure as I can for purposes of trade and continuation. But in terms of growing foods that I like and that I enjoy and that are healthy and beneficial for me and my family, that's what I like to do. I notice a lot in my community that when people are growing foods, they're growing a lot of different things in the same manner, things that they like to eat, that they enjoy, that they like to serve up, with particular meals, that they have. So yeah, I just really kind of see it as a preference in this fusion that we have, right? Within our own homes and gardens.
Right, and that fusion is also, like an intertribal sort of fusion. I know I've had, a couple of special meals of yours, Ray, that mixed wild rice and salmon and corn from down here. When you're serving, special meals like that mix, all these different ingredients from traditional ingredients from different tribes, what are you telling the person who's eating the food when you're mixing it up like that?
Well, I'll first start by saying Mother Nature's the true artist. And, a lot of it's just being exposed to these different ingredients and being able to paint a picture of how they're going to taste together, and then putting it together so it has that explosive flavor profile, also some crunch and some, and just making sure it's well balanced.
It also shows, like the entrepreneurial nature of Native people when we have all of these ingredients available. I mean, we can go and buy wild rice from one of the Great Lakes and have it here in New Mexico, and we can have maple syrup from up in the East Coast from those tribes here in our pantries here. I mean, it's I think that's also the story that is being told right now is part of that changing narrative of Native food is we're also entrepreneurs too. I want to talk about with Andrea over there. I want to talk about you mentioned the spiritual side of indigenous food when we talked the other day or last night, literally last night. Okay, So tell us more about the spiritual side of indigenous food.
I think when we aspire to be wholesome human beings, it's important to recognize the connection between mind, body, and spirit, and not separating those from one another. So, like Addie mentioned, using food as medicine. When you use food as medicine, it's not just nurturing, your physical body or your health, but it is nurturing your spirit and your mind as well. And so, I think that when you are able to have respect, for Mother Earth and respect for the land and connection to the land and respect for the people who are growing our foods, and that it includes prayer and thanksgiving, right? Giving thanks for Mother Earth and her elements. I think that transfers over, into our food when we include prayer even in cooking, or when you say you have a kitchen item, a kitchen tool that was passed down from, it was your mother's or your grandmother's, and you use that to cook your food. That's a way of honoring, your ancestors and remaining connected. And so I think when we share stories, or when we think about food as medicine, and when we were feeling sick as a kid, what did our grandma or what did our mom, use to heal us, and continuing to pass those down, to now your children, or creating those traditions within your own kitchen by honoring that kind of history within your family or your community, I think is what kind of brings that connection between mind, body, and spirit, and that it just includes, spirituality and prayer in our cooking, in our kitchens, and honoring our ancestors, our traditions in relation to food. Yeah.
All right, and I saw you guys kind of nodding your heads. Addie, do you want to maybe add more to like the medicinal part or the spiritual part of indigenous food?
I had wrote a little bit about a post that I read. There was just this really beautiful practice in the Philippines, I believe it was, of praying for your food, as you're growing it, as you're harvesting it, as you're processing it, and then cooking it. And we have a joke here, in New Mexico. I've heard this a lot, not just in our tribal communities, but, I know a lot of Spanish folks that have this joke, is that chili was hot, she was pissed off. There's this thing about energy transfer, and we talked a little bit about that, a long time ago. And we talk about our spirituality, and as somebody who gathers medicines, who makes medicines as well as products, I don't have very many connections to tons and tons of plants, because I tend to work with plants that are within my community, like hyper-local and regional. But I never, ever harvest a plant without saying a prayer and asking permission, like ever. Offering something, offering water, cornmeal, whatever it is I might have. Sometimes I'll see something and I won't have an intention to go out there and harvest, but I make sure I ask that permission, and if the plant says no, I don't harvest it, I move right on and I give thanks, and sometimes, it's not a voice that you hear. Maybe you look around and you see there's not many, and they have to go to seed, and you got to consider a lot of different things. So that's another part of it, those considerations. I tend to not harvest, the first season of Kota, because those are for our pollinators. Those are the first things that come out. And I tend to harvest really late, like now. When I get the Kota, it's a little bit drier, but, we know that our pollinators have gotten it. A lot of it's gone to seed, and it's left in for, our future. And so really thinking about that. And then one of the things that I read was this beautiful comment by a lady out in Los Angeles, who said that really a big part of it is all these things leading up to it, but sitting down and before you eat that meal, giving thanks, because it calms you down and it centers you and it brings you into a place to receive all the blessings that have been given right before. So when you're doing that, you're absorbing all that good energy, and you're opening yourself up for that too.
Ray, why don't you also talk about like the healing part of indigenous food, maybe the spiritual part of indigenous food? I know you mentioned that you were part of that project.
Definitely. So food is life. Spirituality, we offer food when we before we eat, we put food back on the earth. Also, we pray with our food, with our corn mother. Food is very spiritual, but we know from scientific data that eating indigenous diet can alter your health. We had several people that did a pre-blood test and a post-blood test, ate a all indigenous diet for 3 months, and some of these people were borderline diabetics, high blood pressure, the whole list of health issues. And a lot of these health issues subsided. There's scientific proof to back that up. It became a book. So it's very, very factual, and it's very real.
What is this book called again?
The Pueblo Food Experience.
Okay. All right. For everybody who just showed up right now, this is a live podcast recording. We are talking about the changing culinary narrative of Native America. And I want to go on to a question about permission. Addie was just talking about permission, getting permission to do different things with food. Who should be in control of our culinary narrative? Does anybody want to go first? Let's go to Addie.
There's no permission for our culinary narrative in terms of one person. I mean, I'd say community first. Like I think you asked me a question many years ago, Andy, about having permission to, what do I think about, the work that I do, with some of the plants that are considered sacred, sacred medicines. I know better because I was raised to have that respect. I have, traditions, values, and a connection to my culture. Some people don't. I would say seeking that permission if you're going to do something outwardly, but if you're going to do something at home in the privacy of your own home, then yeah, definitely. I wouldn't go out there and go into Ray's community, just say, oh yeah, this is a Santa Clara, meal, it's traditional, because I don't know that. I don't have that connection, so definitely seeking that. And if it's something very sacred, I would say probably looking towards your elders, looking towards, family members, community kiva leaders, people like that who hold those, that significance and that special place in our communities, to talk to.
All right, cool, thank you. Ray, you want to tackle that one too? Who should be in charge of our culinary narrative? Who should be in charge of changing it?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I'll take that from I guess in a modern perspective. I guess we're all responsible for our own well-being at the end of the day. But I believe we have a responsibility to our community to at least pass on to our next generations our identity, our food identity, and who we are through those links. I think that's very important. So I guess I'm saying, it's everybody's responsibility to pass those things on.
Andrea, do you want to tackle that one?
Well, I think that Ray and Addie had very good points. Indigenous communities are ultimately, the ones who should be changing the narrative or identifying what's important for the survival or the continuance of, food traditions within our communities and within our tribal nations as well.
All right, cool, thank you. Ray, you mentioned fry bread. That is still like the thing that pops into everybody's mind when we mention Native American food and indigenous food. They're like, oh, is it a podcast about fry bread? Or is it a podcast about getting high and eating fry bread? No. So, how do we move beyond fry bread? How do we, get beyond that story and that narrative of fry bread? You want to go, Ray?
Oh, sure. It's definitely a challenge as when you are culinarily trained. Everything in the fry bread is what they train you to put into food to make it interesting and palatable for people. Because in the culinary school, they're training you to put fats and sears and different types of things onto food. So in that aspect, it's designed almost to be addictive. So that is the challenge, is teaching your kids again, like, hey, like there's more to Native American food than fry bread. Sometimes it might be putting that other food on the fry bread, as we talked about fusion, using these foods as bridges or crutches to inform and teach what the reality really is.
All right. Andrea, you want to tackle that one too? Moving beyond fry bread, moving beyond some of these like, not stereotypical, but just like really widely known, basic, on the surface foods.
Definitely, and I think that goes back to just, reintroducing our ancestral ingredients, like Ray mentioned earlier, quinoa and amaranth. I think what is really important too is with this intertribal sharing of ancestral foods, there's a lot of similarities amongst the tribes, and being able to share creation stories. In my tradition, the ants were the ones that brought the corn and the chia and the amaranth to the people. And so I feel like when you share stories like that, it can really motivate you to want to try these ingredients, to want to learn more about them, and, maybe try something different other than fry bread or stuff like that.
Addie, you wanna go next?
Yeah, I mean, these are great answers. I'd say just, getting really creative with your foods, your indigenous ingredients. I had a challenge when my son was during his traditional time, and, whatever I cooked, fry bread, of course. And I didn't cook fry bread. By the way, I refuse to cook fry bread. I'm against fry bread, just because I've seen what it's done in our communities and I understand where it comes from. Don't get me wrong, I've eaten it and all that, but I feel like there's so much more to food than just fry bread. Coming from a kid's palate, understanding at 8 years old that he had to eat all these traditional foods that I had no idea how to prepare. I'm like, am I just gonna like fry meat every day? I mean, I don't know. So just getting creative. I mean, I got to a point where I was making like blue corn cakes with flowers on top of them, and this like almost like wajape sauce, with wild blueberries and choke cherries and wild plums, and just making all this beautiful food. And I'll tell you right now, any day of the week, if I ask my son what he wants, he'll want something, with our traditional foods. He prefers it.
You're talking in retrospect, that was when your son was very small, and now he's like a tall, young man now. And, over the years, you've gotten really good at cooking. I've had some of your cooking, and it's really, really good. I mean, I know you don't call yourself a chef. You've maybe done a little bit of catering or a little bit of cooking for people, right? Yeah.
I'm a cooker.
You're a cooker. I'm not a chef, a cooker. All right. In the last couple years, in the last decade or so, food media has really grabbed on to some Native American food. I know, everybody's still addicted to the sous chef up in Minnesota, and Owanmi going on up there. But, how do you think we can kind of maybe move that along and help that kind of narrative of, Native Americans have food and restaurants? That's still kind of the narrative that's being told in food media of Native food. How do you think we can, kind of move on from that?
Invest in us. Yeah. Invest in our businesses. We'll grow our businesses. We're passionate about what we do.
I mean, I'm 100% right there with Ray. It's just acknowledging, that there's more to, the story than just, one powerhouse. I mean, no knock to the sous chef or anything like that, because he's really helped bring, this awareness and create a lot of opportunities for, our native chefs, our native foods and stories, but really thinking more along the lines of, individuals like, Ray's amazing, he's amazing. And I worked with Ray, and he's brought a lot of awareness and creativity and amazing food, out there. I mean, I'm not a chef again, but I love to cook with our foods, and I think just opening that dialogue and within our communities, as you have, right? I mean, your podcast is a start. When it started, it was just like, who, what, like you said, right? But now it's here, and everybody, I think, looks to you and continue with these stories, and that support.
Cool, thank you. Andrea, you want to go next?
I would just like to add that as foodies or business owners, we can also support each other. I was really excited to be here today. I knew of Addie, and I knew of Toasted Sister, so I'm super excited to meet you guys in person. Was not familiar with Ray, but I tried everything on your menu, and everything was so delicious. If we had not been here together today, I'm not sure how I would have, learned about you. And so I feel like we can reach out, we can look, we can find people that are doing similar work to what we're doing and support each other, as well as everything that Addie and Ray said, and connect with your people. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm excited to go over to the Manko food truck after this and get those sweet potatoes with the marshmallow sauce on top. Ray, where'd you harvest those marshmallows?
That was the fusion part.
Okay. All right, so we're, of course, at the Prickly Pear Festival here. What's your favorite prickly pear food? Your favorite way to use prickly pear?
Yeah, I use it in a lot of different ways. I do grind the seeds down, but I make an oil out of them, and I use it in a face serum that I have called Free Radical Face Oil. And I also powder it, and I love to use that in different products. I made a soap with it, a sugar scrub, a face mask, food for your face. But I also like to give it to my mom. It's extremely good diuretic, and she's diabetic, and she likes sweets. So if I'm going to give her something sweet, it's a good summertime drink to have with lemonade and ice. So it's really nice.
Nice. What about you, Andrea?
Like they said, there's so many different ways to use prickly pear or the cactus. Today I did a food demonstration, and we made a prickly pear agua fresca, and we passed out samples, and everybody loved it. And so, but my favorite way is just like that, raw, just by itself, cold, like nice and cold.
Nice. So we're kind of coming down to the end of the hour here. I wanted to give you guys a chance to, mention anything that you'd like to mention to my audience here, on the podcast, and the audience we have here at the Prickly Pear Festival. Is there anything else you'd like to tell folks about our culinary narrative and our changing culinary narrative? Let's go to Addie.
I'd like to just say, like we talked a little bit about our food as our medicine. I'd like to think a little bit more, because I'm a natural product maker. Our food isn't only, something that we ingest, in a prepared meal. These are things that we can put on our bodies. These are things that we can put in our hair, that we can take within the same way. Our skin is the largest part of our body, like about 65% of everything that you put on your body, like lotions or soaps or shampoos and things like that, go directly into your bloodstream. So what you're taking in is that plant. I would say just to think a little bit more about the products that you're purchasing, the things that you're putting on your body, things that you're putting in your hair, as well as the food that you're eating and ingesting.
All right. Andrea, you want to go next?
I feel like here in New Mexico, we're really blessed because we do have access to farmers like Addie, or to ranchers, or to hunters, within our communities, within our families. And so I just feel like it's super important to utilize what we have access to. And here in this region, I didn't mention my catering business, which is My Abuela's Catering. And we specialize in indigenous foods, and we really try to be very conscious about the ingredients that we use and where it comes from, and take pride in being able to offer wild game or ancestral ingredients that I specialize in also a fusion of ancestral ingredients from the South and from the North. In the menu that we offer, we do offer wild game, and we also offer ancestral ingredients such as grasshoppers and crickets and stuff that we consume down south, and as well as traditional moles. I import ingredients from the South because that's where I'm from. And I just want to say thank you to Addie and to Ray and to Toasted Sister Podcast as well. It is an honor to be here with you guys and learn from you. And I hope we can continue these conversations.
All right, cool. Ray?
Just keep it short. It's a really exciting time to be native, and it's a really exciting time to be in the food industry. Keep updated because there's a lot of cool things coming. That's it.
So that is the show. Our guests were Ray Naranjo, chef and owner of Manko, Addie Lucero, farmer and owner of Dancing Butterfly Naturals, and Andrea Garza, caterer and owner of Mayahuel Catering. Thank you so much to the Prickly Pear Festival for inviting me to take part in this great event. Special thank you to my dad, Tim Murphy, over here for engineering today's show. And of course, thanks to my sister, Alicia, and mom, Kathy. They're always helping me with whatever I do. And, thank you all for coming to this first ever live recording of the Toasted Sister podcast. Music for Toasted Sister is by C.W. Ione from Las Cruces, New Mexico. Some equipment help comes from Native America Calling and the Kiwanis Broadcast Corporation. I'm Andy Murphy, creator, producer, and host of this award-winning podcast. Thank you. All right, I'll let you guys get back to your booths then. Thank you.